I'm Tori Johnson, and this is At Work. Your resume and your connections will help you get an interview, but it's your attitude that will make or break your chances of getting that job. Mark Murphy, author of Hiring for Attitude, is here with some tips on how to get hired. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Tori. It's great to talk to you.
Thank you so much. So you say that companies don't want to hire what you call emotional vampires. So tell us what that is, and how do you know if you are one of those?
Yeah, the emotional vampire is the person that just sucks the life out of you. This is the person, they've got great technical skills, but their attitude is just absolutely lousy. And if you go out and you ask leaders in organizations, would you rather work short-staffed or work with somebody with a bad attitude? Universally, they will say, I would rather work short-staffed than work with somebody with a bad attitude.
That's right.
So you know you're an emotional vampire if nobody asks you to participate on teams, if they turn to you for technical issues, but they don't turn to you to be part of teams, they don't ask your advice on how do I handle this political, this cultural situation, they don't ask you to represent the company's brand, they don't ask you to be an ambassador for the company. Those are clear signs that you may be valued for your technical skills, but you're not really a fit with the culture, and if they could get rid of you, they would. They would,
yeah. They're not asking you out to lunch, no hanging out, no extra activity. All right, so lots of companies like to ask behavioral questions, those questions like, what are your weaknesses? But you say, no, not those questions. Why not?
Well, the real issue is you don't want to ask any question to which you're not going to get different responses. So when you ask a question like, tell me about yourself, every candidate has a pretty stock prepared answer to this. So they say, well, you know, I'm a motivated self-starter and I'm great on teams, but I also love individual accountability. And then they say, well, that sounds great. Do you have any weaknesses? And that's when the candidate says, well, I don't really like to talk about this too much, but I've been told in the past I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I care too much. I give too much of myself on the team. And you don't want to ask
I work too hard.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't want to give any question because it just wastes time in the interview. If you have only 40, 60 minutes to talk to this person, you don't want to give any question that is going to get the same response out of absolutely everybody. It's a waste of time.
All right. So when you think about some of the questions that you're asking that are the good questions to ask, you say that one of the things that we can determine by the answers is whether or not somebody has a bad attitude based on the verbs that they're using. How so? Tell me about those bad verbs, bad attitude verbs.
Yeah, this is one of the new cutting-edge pieces of this, of interviewing and hiring, is that we can now actually tell high performers from low performers by how they speak. So, for example, companies now know that high performers, when they're in interviews, they tend to speak in the past tense. They tend to talk about very specific accomplishments, whereas people that are more likely to be low performers tend to use a lot of present and future tense. Instead of saying, here's specifically what I did in these exact situations, instead they'll say things, well, like, you know, what you should do is, or what I would do if I faced that situation, here's what I would do. You know, if I saw a child rushing across the street, I'd rush across and I'd save them and I'd be the hero. Well, we don't know. What we need to know is what they actually did do in those exact situations. High performers use 40% more past tense verb than low performers do. Low performers use 100% more future and present tense verbs than high performers do.
That's so fascinating. Yeah, they say that like past performance is the best possible indicator of your potential for future success, that looking at past performance, whether it's for as a sports recruit or in any kind of job interview, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, it's a very cut and dry, very matter-of-fact statement of those successes. In fact, we also found that low performers use 40% more adverbs and adjectives than high performers do. The high performers don't feel need to say, well, I was always the best. I am the number one. I'm fantastic at everything. I'm super great. They say, listen, I was third out of 82 salespeople. Here's exactly what I accomplished. Here's the specific numbers. 82% of the time I closed on these kinds of deals. They're very matter-of-fact, very cut and dry. They don't feel a need to amp up the language and fluff it up.
What kind of questions would you love to see more hiring managers ask?
Well, there's a question that we have found achieves absolutely amazing success, and it involves basically asking people, some of the normal questions, but it asked them, tell me about a past boss, what it was like to work with them, but tell me that boss's name, spell their name for me. So tell me about a past boss. Who was your last boss? Oh, it was Bob Smith. Okay, well, how do you spell that? Is that S-M-Y-T-H-E? S-M-I-T-H? Okay, great. S-M-I-T-H. Tell me about Bob Smith. What was Bob Smith like as a boss? And what we found is by putting in this little hook, by actually forcing the candidate to spell the boss's name, it plants a seed in their brain that you can contact this person. You're going to speak to this person. And even if you don't, it starts to plant a seed in their brain that I have to be significantly more honest. And then you can start to ask them questions like, well, what could have been done differently? How would you have handled things differently to make things even more effective with the boss? We found that the #1 reason why new hires fail is they weren't coachable. They couldn't adapt. They couldn't thrive in this new situation. So if you're not coachable, and the simplest way to test this is to have people replay what would they have done differently in that situation after you've prompted them with spell the name of your boss. Now, if they can't go back and figure out, well, I wouldn't have done anything differently. It would have been just exactly the same. No high performer says everything was always perfect as it was. They always have things that they would want to change.
Oh, and you know so many people are going to shudder when you ask about their last boss, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. You can even pick one boss prior to that if you want to, but the critical issue is to make it clear. This isn't some normal fluffy question. I'm asking about your strengths and weaknesses. This is, I want to know how Bob Smith thought about your performance. And if you don't know that, you're probably not going to know how I think about your performance.
So would you say then, if you had to say one final thing that you think every job seeker should be prepared for if they are looking for work right now at a sophisticated organization that's going to ask these smart questions, is that what they should know? Be prepared to talk about, you know, a former boss and what exactly happened, what went wrong, what went right in your last position?
That's going to be a critical piece of this. And one other big takeaway for every job seeker is don't be a job seeker. Stop being a job seeker, be a company seeker. You have to understand what drives success at this unique organization. What are their cultural values? How do they operate as an organization? How do people interact? What separates high performers from low performers? Don't be a job seeker, be a company seeker, and do not apply at this organization until you have talked to at least one person that actually works at that organization, because that's the only way you're really going to figure out what makes this organization unique, what makes them tick.
And
that's
today,
the key.
it's so much easier than ever before to find that person to connect with them.
There's no excuse for not being able to do that nowadays.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thanks so much.
Oh, thanks, Tori.
Absolutely. And you can read so much more of Mark's insights on attitude at work in his new book, Hiring for Attitude, which is available right now.